Welcome to Screen Quest, a podcast where a fellowship of film lovers and armchair movie experts plays film roulette. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Waterman, joined as always by Mr. Will Rotondi.
Hey, hey.
And May Finch, of course.
Hey, guys.
On this week's episode, we are going to be talking about Bonnie and Clyde. This was a you've never seen prompt, which I'm just going to say like that. Say like that forever, I think.
Lean into it, Chris.
Exactly. This was my selection, and I have now removed one from the pile of shame. We will also be doing a side quest, but first, we thought we'd catch up on what we've been watching. So take it away. I'm going to work my way from bottom to top on my screen. So May, hit us first. What have you been watching?
Yeah, so I actually had a movie night last night, and the fun thing about doing movie nights with friends is that you end up watching stuff you never would have picked. So I think this was a straight to streaming movie that came out like during the pandemic called Love and Monsters, and I'd never even heard of it, and I was like, okay, this seems cheesy, but I'll try it. It's basically an apocalypse film where the premise is just ridiculous. It's self-aware that it's ridiculous, thankfully, but the idea is that there's an asteroid coming to Earth. That doesn't cause the apocalypse. Everyone blows it up with rockets, but there's something in the rockets that causes all of the cold-blooded animals on Earth to mutate into monsters.
Okay, that's awesome.
And they
Go
just
on.
wipe out most of the people on Earth. And so like several years later, everyone that is left alive is like living in these like little colony bunkers, and it's really risky to like go onto the surface to try to go to another bunker. But the protagonist is this like 20-something dude that really wants to go find his old girlfriend from the before times, and is like, he's the kind of a guy that always rolls a 1 essentially when he's trying to do stuff.
in our D&D group. Yep.
So it's comical watching him like try to survive on the surface, and it ended up actually being a very sweet film. It defied a lot of the like apocalypse and rom-com tropes that I was expecting it to fall into, and I would give it a solid like B+ A-, which is higher than I was expecting. So if you don't have anything else to watch on a Friday or Saturday night, check out Love and Monsters.
Where do you know where it's streaming? Do you recollect?
I think it's Netflix.
I know they all run together, like honestly, but it's just I was curious. We'll come back to that's.
It's Prime, Amazon Prime, and Paramount.
Nice. All right. Love and Monsters. You see, I've already forgot Love and Monsters. Okay, got it.
With Dylan O'Brien and Jessica Henwick.
Amazing. All right. Will, how about you? What have you been watching?
A little bit of everything, man. So after our talk last week about The Dark Knight and you talking so much about how much you enjoyed the latest incarnation of Batman, I went and watched The Batman on HBO Max, and then proceeded to check off other items on my HBO Max queue, which included Raised by Wolves, at least an episode or two of that. And then my wife, who really was interested in checking out an anime they've got on there called Belle, which was kind of cool. So we watched that earlier today. So that's probably it. I feel like there's probably one more in there. Oh, and on the subject of heist movies for later today as a tie-in, there is a movie by Michael Bay called Ambulance that is also on, I want to say, Peacock. That is ridiculous. And so that was my that was like the movie choice that you go and you watch just because you have no expectation and you just want to see a bunch of shit blow up. And that was pretty much it stuck the landing on that. So
yeah, Michael Bay films, if you don't know what you're in for by now, then I don't know what to tell you. You got decades literally of prior works to kind of draw off of, but yeah, it can be fun for sure. I heard that one was a bit more of a return to form for him, where like it had a little more substance than some of like maybe his like more recent like Transformer movies and stuff like that. So not a high bar to clear from what I understand, but it's nice to see that he's like still doing his thing, you know.
It's true. People keep giving him money, so he's gonna keep making stuff blow up. I feel like the last thing he did was like something for Netflix before that, which may have also been kind of a heisty movie because it was like Ryan Reynolds and ah, I'd have to look that one up again. But yeah, so he every once in a while there'll be something that'll come out, and it's pretty par for the course, like you mentioned. It's got a bunch of various or stereotyped characters, and not very deep, but not really what you're probably looking for if you watch a Michael Bay movie. So that's
You know what you're getting into.
yeah, exactly. You're just hoping that everybody makes it out okay that you care about, which may or may not happen. But in this one, it was surprising that it did turn out okay. It's one of those things too where you watch it and you could, if you really wanted to, nitpick about a lot of stuff, like why is this even still a plot? But that again, like if you've seen a Michael Bay movie, you know that doesn't matter, and you just have to roll with it. So
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he made some good, really good, like I think movies back in the 90s, especially like the Rock, like that era of like Michael Bay films seemed to have a little bit more heart. It could have been the casting choices too, like although he's had some heavy hitters and some other stuffs, but I'm glad to hear it was enjoyable, man. That's all it really counts. As long as you had a good time, you didn't regret watching it, like it's always worth it, at least like a little bit. So
yep.
very cool. What really quick, what did you think of the Batman? Couple sentences, like review. No need, you don't have to go super deep in if you don't want to, but just curious.
I really enjoyed it. I will say that I thought it felt like it was a little long in a couple of parts, but overall I thought the pacing was great. I really enjoyed, this is going to sound kind of generic, but it was very dark, both in tone and just visually dark. Like everything was just in very dark hue or obscured, and I liked that. I liked watching a darker Batman version that wasn't in like Zack Snyder's sort of Justice League universe. And I was pleasantly surprised by Robert Pattinson as a young Bruce Wayne, and I really liked Colin Farrell as the Penguin. That was, I mean, just
Steals
in
the
like,
show, man. He's so
I
great.
know, just the way that he played the character and the prosthetics and the look. Like, if you didn't know that was Colin Farrell, you might not guess that was him. So that was cool, and I really liked Zoe Kravitz, right, as Catwoman, because I really liked her too in that role. That was great. So yeah, overall, definitely recommend it. I will say it's a little long too, which depending on how you are with the length of a movie, depending on time, and if you want to watch it all in one go, then that's just something to keep in mind. But overall, no, definitely recommend.
It's my favorite introduction to Batman too.
Mm.
Like the first scene that like where you actually like see him, the way that's like structured is like I thought was so interesting and neat, because I actually won't say it because May hasn't seen it yet, so I'll leave it up. But I think that's my favorite like introduction to Batman in any of those like series, like for sure how they go about it's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I haven't seen too many like new films. I am like I just by accident I realized I'd watched like two Quentin Tarantino movies like in reverse order from newest to oldest, and now I've just decided that's going to be a thing that I just do because it's very Tarantino to do that. So I'm slowly working my way back through. Inglourious Bastards is up next. We have been watching a lot of TV. We are about halfway through The Bear, which is incredible. Really, really like it. It's a nice I don't know, little palate cleanser from a lot of the stuff that I feel like I've seen this year that has been sort of like really, really gigantic in scope family dramas like Succession, or like something real cerebral like Severance. This has a lot of interesting things to say about like family dynamics, but it's just it unfolds in a very unique way, and I love the kind of frantic pace that'll like go to a really quiet slow moment and then a frantic pace. Like it's nice. It feels almost like sitting in like a jazz concert in a way where whoever I don't know like off the top of my head the name of the show creator, showrunner, but they know what they're doing. It's a masterful thing, and it's been brilliant to watch.
I've heard it's
Then
like an unusually realistic depiction of like back of house dynamics at a restaurant.
yes, I having worked in a couple of restaurants, I can say that is very much accurate. Like everything from like the lingo to like again like how people kind of talk to each other. Some of it's a little bitchy. But at the end of the day, like, a good restaurant, like that's all kind of in good fun, and it's just the nature of like what that environment feels like. But yeah, it also has some like really, really deep narrative meat that I wasn't expecting. And I don't want to like say, I think it's one of those ones that's just, you just go, like fire it up and watch it and you'll see what I mean. But there's some quite heavy things in there. But I love it. Has that Sorkinese kind of like dialogue that's very
Of
zippy.
course.
Where even though it's a half-hour show, it has probably like twice as much dialogue on the page as like many of the shows that would be like kind of in that ilk. So highly recommend it. Our bedtime show, kind of just to round things out, has been Curb Your Enthusiasm. I've not seen all of that before. I've only seen like just bits and pieces. So that's been kind of a nice way to unwind at night, is to watch Larry David fumble his way through everyday life and get in trouble with, it seems like, everybody on the planet Earth for the stupidest of shit. So
Nice.
there you have it. Yeah. All right, well, let's draw us a side quest, see what we have on the menu today to continue with some of the bear terminology. And it is a Dreamcast. So this is where we will attempt to recast somebody from a well-known film and with a different actor and kind of discuss that. So this might be one we have to cut around because it does take a little bit of pondering. Most of us probably don't walk around with a lot of these in our back pocket, so
I feel like you do, Chris.
not for something like this. I don't know. I will be honest. Like I do not.
I have a ridiculous one if you can't think of one.
Please, no,
Go
by all
for it.
means. Yeah.
Okay. Hear me out. Technically, I would like to replace Jared Leto in everything that he's been in. But specifically, I think Morbius could have been saved if David Tennant played him. Because
Ooh.
one, David Tennant can pull off basically anything, and he's done like a really good job playing a villain in there was like a Marvel series he was in that he really just nailed it.
Jessica Jones,
Yeah, Jessica Jones. Two, Matt Smith is also in Morbius, and they've both played the Doctor. And like, can you just imagine like the nerd freak out from having them both in the same film? Like that alone would drive box office sales.
Yeah, so I think David Tennant could like going back to all of like, if I'm looking at every Jared Leto role, like a David Tennant Joker, like sure, I could definitely be on board for that. Like, because he played Joker in the Suicide Squad movie and a couple others. David Tennant getting an axe in the face, courtesy of Christian Bale, sure. Like I could, in American Psycho.
That one can stay. I'm fine with Jared Leto doing that.
Okay, well, fair enough. That's the one exception. It's the only role that he ever took on and just never got work again, I guess. Yeah. No, I love David Tennant.
And he's just like I feel like anyone who like went through like the traditional Shakespearean like kind of acting it's just very good and very flexible with what they're able to do, because I did some stuff with the Shakespearean theater in college, and like it's really hard to work with that material sometimes, and you really have to understand it and be nuanced in how you're saying things for it to like come across well to a modern audience. And yeah, it shows with people like David Tennant. Sir Patrick Stewart's another person who went through that kind of training. So yeah, I think if anyone could save Morbius, it would be David Tennant.
I tend to agree. I haven't seen it, but I love that the studio completely misunderstood the memification of that movie and thought that, oh, people want this to come back to theaters, and then it bombed like a second time. But yeah, I think like that could have been a more interesting movie from what little I know about it. He's my favorite Doctor. Like that was the and when Eccleston, like went away, like as I was watching, because I was way late to the party, I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But and then with David Tennant, I was like, no, it's not time. It's not your time. No,
I know.
Please. He was by far my favorite.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I like his quirky sense of presence in most of the roles that he has. And I didn't watch Jessica Jones, but I did know that he was in that. So that's excellent to hear that he can also play a very creepy, manipulative bad guy. But yeah, I feel bad for I feel bad for Jared Leto. Like he tries really hard, man, but he's kind of weird too. I think the Joker thing, like all the like method acting and the
Sending
like
like dead animals to people.
yeah, when it gets to be like you
Condoms
start
and stuff,
weirding
yeah.
out your coworkers by doing stuff and all the like the weird negative publicity that came out about that, it's just like, I mean, I appreciate like what he tries to do in film, like when Blade Runner 2049, I thought, you know, he does have the acting chops, but it's like there's certain things where he just takes it a little bit too far, and so that to me was like, yeah, that's too bad. And I don't know what it was setting Morbius up for such like, I guess, a catastrophic failure from what it sounds like, because I didn't watch it either. I just heard about it, and then of course the memes and everything you guys are talking about. But I just felt bad for that. Like he seemed like he was pretty excited for that too. So I guess it's just one of those things. But hopefully he can turn it around. Maybe just pull back a little bit on the change the acting up a little bit, you know, the method for it. But yeah.
He's
That's
just
too
he
bad.
also he literally runs a cult. Like as a person, Jared
Oh,
Leto
Oh,
is
really?
not
yeah.
someone I'd ever want to encounter.
Wow. Yeah, I
Duly
did not
noted.
know that. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. He's a piece of work, but I mean, Morbius had a lot of issues. Like the script writing is kind of ridiculous. There's
Mm.
continuity errors throughout the film. The editing is also kind of strange. Like, I mean, Marvel movies will do this too sometimes, but there's just like all these like special effects layered over all of the action scenes that makes it actually hard to appreciate any of the action and lots of stuff.
Mm.
But I think it could be like significantly salvaged just with some recasting.
I take it back. There is one role of his that I really liked, and I thought he nailed it and did an amazing job. And that Dallas Buyers Club.
Mm.
That was a really, really. I felt like he earned all the accolades. Like,
I haven't seen that
um,
one.
it's not the happiest of movie. It deals with like the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and like, but it's he's great in it. Yeah, plays somebody who's like transitioning, I think, and befriends of all the unlikely people. Matthew McConaughey, who's this macho guy who's laboring under the false assumption that you can only get HIV, if you're part of the gay community, and then gets HIV, and then like it's like, well, ostracized by all his guy buddies, and he's sort of having to wrangle with this and figuring out a way to like seek treatment because he's given a very short time to live, and they become friends, and they have such a nice dynamic, and
Hmm.
it's there's some really, really good scenes. Like, so that's the one case I'll make an exception for Jared Leto, but I think you're right for the most part. I'm not a wild fan of his films or his music. So.
Oh, don't get me started on the band.
Yo, hold up, my dude. You said Jared Leto's got a band? All right.
30 Seconds to Mars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, did not realize. Wow. I don't know where I've been the last 10 years.
It's longer than that, I think.
Yeah.
Well, like, so our friend Michelle, that was at Clemson, if you remember her, was in some film classes with us and English classes. Like, she was big into 30 Seconds to Mars. But yeah, I digress.
Wow. Okay. So where have I been the last 20 to 25 years, basically? Okay.
Been around a while. Well, good choice. I support your recasting.
Yeah. Also, I don't want to get accused of like libel or anything. It's not officially a cult, but he has a fan club and retreats that have culty vibes.
Culty vibes. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Okay. We'll redact that and say it's a cult like fan club. There we go.
Maybe it's a religion, maybe he'll pull the L. Ron Hubbard route and write a book, and then we'll go from there.
Amazing. Then we'll get the Jared Leto version of Battlefield Earth.
No, we can definitely skip that.
Oh man.
Oh gosh.
Well, with that said, let's transition to Bonnie and Clyde, which was our pick for our main quest for the week. As always, we're going to start off with some general impressions, and then we're going to do a very quick crash course on what New Hollywood is. So like the time period that it encapsulates, the major films, and then like the stylistic characteristics that make up that era of film, and talk about like how that maybe pops up in Bonnie and Clyde, which is widely considered to be the first big example of this era. And then we'll round it out by having a little discussion about heist tropes and what some of our favorites are, what's overdone, and just have a nice little chat about all of that good stuff. Love me a good heist movie. So good times. Will, I'm going to start with you first. What did you make of Bonnie and Clyde?
I think overall I liked it. I think that certain things about it sort of make me chuckle just because it seems so dramatic in the way that some of the characters react to events around them or how they behave. Like there were a couple of times where I honestly thought, is this really how the 1960s Hollywood thought that the 1930s, like people in the 30s would talk? Or is this just the style at the time for the dialogue? And so that to me was sort of entertaining. I think it's interesting. The film itself tries to be funny at moments and then gets really serious and dark at other times. And I think the blood more than anything else for that time frame was surprising to me, just because you see so many films that just don't do that. You'll have people that get shot and they'll kind of like keel over. But this was surprising to me to see that much blood in a film for when this movie came out. So that was interesting too. That's probably the most that stuck out to me initially.
May, how about you?
Yeah, I'd agree on the blood, and also like just how quickly it would go from like really serious issues around like death and intimacy to just like, you know, cracking jokes. And it also seemed kind of radical in the dark sense of humor, especially from like, you know, Bonnie. And I feel like she's not the kind of woman that was usually depicted on screen, so that's interesting. I thought they would try to make her more likable, frankly, and I kind of like that they didn't. Like I you find it very hard to sympathize with her. Except for when Blanche is screaming, because I would also get annoyed.
May or may not have said, why couldn't you get shot in the throat like last night when I was watching it, but we'll get there.
Oh, and I had no idea Gene Wilder was in it, and he came on the screen and I freaked out.
Yeah, dude. I saw him in the credits when the movie started and I was like, oh, I had no idea. Yo. And then I kept wondering when he was going to show up. And then I was really worried something was going to happen to him. Like, please don't kill him.
Don't kill Willy Wonka.
It's his first screen appearance, and that character I did read is a little fun bit of trivia that's like based on a real anecdote, and the Undertaker that it was really technically a coroner, I think, that they picked up, ended up being one of the ones that actually did like work on their bodies when they were hauled in after the big shootout at the end. So
Oh wow.
Weird chilling bit of foreshadowing and like a coincidence. But yep, sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
Oh no, that was basically it for my first impressions. What about you?
Yeah.
Since this was your pick.
Man, I love this era of filmmaking so much. Like this I can't believe that out of all the films that kind of slip through the cracks, like this is one of them, because it is my favorite era of I think it's the best 20 years of Hollywood that there is, like, period, in existence. The concentration of just really exciting films. And I loved this movie in particular because like I could close my eyes and imagine like being in a movie theater and seeing something like this for the first time, being like in the baby boomer generation especially, and being like, holy shit, like this must have been so exciting. You know, as you have already pointed out, it's very violent from, you know, what traditionally would have been seen. The ways that they explore sexuality like felt very grown up in a lot of ways and interesting. The Technicolor is just one of my favorite like holdovers. It's so fake and it gives films this weird dreamlike quality. So I love that this was in Technicolor. And yeah, I had a great time with it. I think it's not without its flaws, but like if you kind of take it in context of like when it came out, I think it's a really, really incredible film, and I see why it's lauded, as being like one of the most important films in modern cinema for sure. A lot of ways it kicked off modern cinema. So
As someone
Yep.
who sews, I was also like really impressed with the costuming. The best example is Behind Will, but I loved that little outfit that Bonnie had with the little beret and the scarf and
yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like I also the last thing I'll add was I was a little um less shocked because like I'd heard so much about the ending of this film, and as we'll talk about in a second, like the sudden ending with no denouement is like very much a characteristic of this period of Hollywood. So I kind of wish I didn't know that, like how everything kind of went down, but that's like really my only regret because it didn't have the impact I think it might have, like for somebody that either wasn't familiar or like was seeing this like when it was a contemporary film. So well, let's talk a little bit about new Hollywood cinema. So the time period, and again, like all things in the world of academia, there's a bunch of debate over some of the like very specifics, but uh widely considered to be an era that spanned from the mid 60s to the early 80s. So technically there are films that are part of new Hollywood before this one, but this is, as I've said, like kind of considered to be the first big one. This and Easy Rider really paved the way for a lot of what you saw after. The Graduate's another big example from this time period. Characteristics of this period of Hollywood for these films, typically anti-establishment, typically narratives that are non-traditional. So not having a clear like first, second, and third acts where you have the rising action, climax, falling action. Like a lot of that stuff is really disrupted by things like the picnic scene in this, for example, which was one of my favorite parts of the movie. I love the dream, what like ethereal quality. Like I thought maybe it was a dream sequence for a while, but
Me
again,
too.
we'll get there. So stuff like that is very characteristic. Um, Also, you have sort of the birth of like the anti-hero in a lot of these films where they blur the lines of like morality for characters, having likable protagonists like Bonnie and Clyde, for example, who are a little morally gray, or maybe even just like would have been considered villains prior to that. Oh yes, we already kind of touched on it. So the swift kind of resolution of the film, kind of leaving a impact on the audience without much like of any like kind of like tying up a loose ends, denouement, like all that stuff's kind of thrown out the window a lot of the time. So you're kind of just boom, the credits roll. We have at least one other film on our list, our film selections that does this. That's it's quite shocking that I love. So that those are the characteristics. I don't know that I would consider like Return of the Jedi to be like, but that's like the last year that I saw like kind of like in that area, and I think it's just like kind of shoehorned because it's George Lucas. But that and like some of those early 80s movies are kind of the last ones that are part of this era, and you can kind of see some cynicism like if you go and read about this era of Hollywood where it went from being anti-establishment to like marketed anti-establishment. Like the Hollywood got on board very quickly with these films because they were putting asses in the seats like nothing that Hollywood was putting out up to this point. So Dr. Dolittle is a famous example. The Rex Harrison film flopped on its ass hardcore. They were trying to recapture some of that like old Hollywood magic, that purity, and people just weren't going out to see that. Then you have stuff like this, and it this is like pre the blockbuster era, which really started with like Jaws, but people were showing up in droves to see these movies that were kind of somewhere between like a artsy international picture and like traditional Hollywood. So you had bankable stars, you had recognizable names, at least like in the films, like for the actors a lot of the time, with usually unknown directors kind of telling these really interesting stories. So all of that being said, and knowing what some of the elements are, what are some of the things that you guys enjoyed about Bonnie and Clyde, and did you notice some of those tropes kind of popping up in the film here?
I mean, you did mention the dream sequence already. or the picnic dreamlike sequence, I suppose.
Yep.
And yeah, that was very interesting. I liked that the arc of action was not predictable, and it kept me on my toes more and made me pay more attention. Because I wasn't sure if the next scene was going to be, like a quiet moment between Bonnie and Clyde, more kind of like infighting with the whole group, or something completely out of left field, or another heist. And that was interesting. I think that's probably part of like the big appeal of the movie for that time period. And I also think that in terms of like how everyone is depicted, there's no one who is purely good or bad, and everyone seems to be multidimensional, even the supporting characters. Like we have Blanche, who could just be this annoying kind of crybaby in the group, right? But she does get at least a little bit of background, as you find out she's a preacher's daughter, grew up in the church, and is probably feeling a lot of internal conflict over all of this. And
Yeah,
it's
just a
cool to get
smidge.
that. Yeah, just a bit. Internal, semi-external conflict. And yeah, I don't know, it's just interesting to see that with characters from this time period, especially since a lot of early films do kind of try to tell a moral tale, and this is more just like, nope, these are people, they make good decisions and bad decisions, and this is their story.
I definitely feel like the idea of like bucking the law, basically trying to take what you feel you are owed and finding your own success. I guess especially because this was the Depression, and so people were feeling very hopeless in terms of what they had the ability to do and survive. And you see that a lot with like the farmer whose house, I guess everything was foreclosed to the bank, and how Clyde is shown to empathize with him and to want to do right by him. At first, it was like when Clyde made the comment, just kind of like the offhand comment, like, "Oh yeah, we rob banks." Like I always thought, like, are you trying to make this farmer feel better, or did you like feel inwardly that you wanted to do good by him, or you just thought, you know what, this is an opportunity, um, and it's interesting to see. I guess it's one of those things, like in a lot of heist movies, we want to root for them to succeed, even though they are breaking the law and then sometimes murdering people, as is the case in this film. There's a lot of heist movies where it's sort of like they get a pass if they're nice people. Like Ocean's 11, where it's like, well, you didn't really murder anybody, and we like all of you, and we think you all look really nice in the clothing that you've got, and you're personable and you work well together as a team. So yeah, like we hope you pull it off and stick it to that, smug casino boss and all of his, smarminess. But and other times it's, you have to sort of temper that with the fact that, they are breaking the law, or they are committing other crimes along the way, and sort of what is the punishment going to be for that? Are they going to get away with it or not? Are they going to eventually get their comeuppance at some point? And I feel like in some case, I mean, like I'm trying to think if there's been any film where it sort of was left open-ended. I feel like the original Italian Job is sort of open-ended in that respect, where you're not really sure if they're going to get away with it or not, or if the vehicle is going to fall off the side of the cliff. Spoiler, if anybody has not seen that film, that ends on that. So maybe put a little tagline in front of that. But it's yeah, yeah, I think that's probably what stood out to me the most, was you are made to want to empathize with them, but at the same time, that something is going to happen because of what they're doing.
Even in like a more like modern like example of like a Heat, I wouldn't
Mhm,
say that De Niro character is particularly nice in that, but he's interesting.
mhm.
So there is that sort of tension between, I kind of want to see you pull this off, but at the same time, you know, I'm okay if you don't, like, I could go either way, and you do feel a little bit of that tension. And you have the Pacino character who's a cop, like, who isn't also particularly nice either. So you're like, well, I, I could see you getting outsmarted, and I'd be fine with that. But also, if you catch De Niro, like that is just as interesting to me. So I love that kind of ambiguity. And I think with Bonnie and Clyde, they're charming. They have charisma, but yes, like they do murder people on screen, and it can be, I think, it was shocking to me, like when there was like the first big shootout where it's like, oh, okay, like they're not trying to like maim, they're not trying to just get away, like they are absolutely, like, anybody that's going to impede their progress, like they're going to kill them, especially after that first death with the guy that gets shot through the window
In the face.
like, in the face. Yeah. So yeah, that's it's a little hard to reconcile sometimes, and I think to your point, well, it does it makes it a little more interesting.
They're also like they seem very childish in a lot of ways. They love to toy with people. Like when they first come up to Gene Wilder's character, they're just, messing with him essentially.
Making faces
Yeah,
through the window.
literally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous and off-putting, but I feel like that kind of childlike characteristic and the fact that they're essentially doing this just to have fun. It's partly the money, but a lot of it's just to have fun is also interesting and unique.
Yeah, when we first meet Bonnie Parker, she's in sort of repose and just dying of boredom, right?
Yeah.
Like you would think that she is physically dying from boredom, and just the excitement of meeting Clyde, and like, yeah, this is I don't think at any point we see them super flush with cash, right? This seems to be more about the thrill than anything else. And it's no accident that this movie resonated with people at the time that it came out, because you got to think this is like Vietnam was really ramping up at this point. This is a year before the Tet Offensive, which is like where like the draft was kicking into like high gear, but like Vietnam was very much in the forefront of people's brains. There was a lot of frustration and disillusion with like the American government and authorities figures. So I can see why a film like this would excite people a little bit, because here you have these two characters that are very anti-establishment and rebellious and rambunctious, and you probably would have wanted to root for them a bit. What did you make of the ending? So like the sudden end, like again, this is one of my favorite tropes of the era. It frustrates a lot of people like the first time they encounter a film like of this era, and have that, because we're so used to that denouement, that happens, where you can kind of have some time to reflect while the film is still going before the credits roll, where you can kind of process things. And this doesn't give you that time whatsoever. It is very much, bang, 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 the end. So what did you guys make of that? Have you ever seen like a film of this era, or like, have you ever encountered something like this before?
I definitely have. I'm trying to think of what specific movies were that ended like this. Personally, I loved it. The Green Knight is kind of similar, right? It
Yeah.
cuts off right as the axe is coming down. But I loved it because so much of the film is you're swinging between I guess kind of like frustration at all the infighting in this group, the thrill of their heists, and the kind of anxiety of the moments when they are just kind of having fun and enjoying themselves and being in love, but it seems like there's this other shoe always waiting to drop, and it's just one wild joyride essentially, and then you crash at the end. And I don't know, it makes the viewer experience kind of mirror their experience a little bit, and I like when movies do that.
Do you have any like either modern examples, or like had you encountered a similar sort of like ending, like for film of this time period or outside before, or is this like the first you've seen of something like this?
I would say that, and I don't know if this is a good comparison or not, but No Country for Old Men sort of felt like it just sort of cut. And even though a lot of what had happened had already been resolved, I think that to a certain extent, I didn't really expect it to just cut after Tommy Lee Jones's ending monologue. And So I think that it's definitely something I'm not opposed to. I think it's very good when it's strategic and intentional about how you want to feel. Like that's how you want your audience to feel going out of the film. And so to have it be this, massive shootout at the end, surprise attack, no, I think it was very effective. I think it was very well done. And I thought it was just an interesting way to frame it too, for being inside the vehicle when they're walking up, how everybody is framed through the windows that you see right before it cuts.
Yeah, definitely like intent there is to leave a lasting impression. You don't want to talk about Fade to Black. Like, oof.
Mhm.
Like this is definitely one where you know, uh, the intent is to kind of shock you and then like piss off out of the theater now, like with you, like go reconcile that out in the real world because you're not going to do it here in the movie theater. We're not going to give you that time, and I kind of love that. Reservoir Dogs seems to have aped this a little bit. Like that movie doesn't even resolve. Like it cuts to black, and like you hear the ending of that movie like in the credits, like which is
Mm.
brilliant. So like you don't even get the satisfaction of seeing the final shootout. It's literally Steve Buscemi like crashes out through the door, the credits start rolling, and you hear the gunfire, and like you don't even get what we get here, which
Mm.
I didn't realize was a nod until like having seen it. And I'm like, I think that's probably something he was aping, or certainly wanted to go a similar route. So yeah, I kind of love that. What did you all make of sort of the it was very against the typecasting for Warren Beatty, like with like the type of like he is obviously charming, but like in particular you can read it as impotence or whatever, but like the dynamics of like sexuality and romance were not at all what I expected in this movie. I didn't know anything about that, and I think it was one of the most interesting parts. But what did you guys think of that, like and like how the dynamic between Bonnie and Clyde specifically as romantic partners?
It was unexpected for me too, especially since there's like so much innuendo in the first like 10 minutes of the
Yeah.
film.
I know.
Mhm.
Uh
Mhm. A lot of foreplay. Yep.
yeah, literally showing off his pistol. But I was like doing some thinking and reading about it after I watched it, and it does seem to me like it emphasizes the fact that Bonnie obviously cares for Clyde, but for her, the thrill and excitement is just what they're able to do together with these heists. And
Mhm.
she's obviously like wanting more and longing for more anytime he's like is trying to provide that for her. But it does subvert expectations because I know at least the kind of mythos of Bonnie and Clyde is usually hypersexualized, and
Mhm.
Yes.
taking that element away kind of forces the audience to reckon with the fact that, these aren't just two kids like, in love and driven by hormones. This is a more, I guess, frightening need just to rob and kill and fly in the face of the law. And I feel like that makes it, if anything, more like radical and unsettling.
Awesome. Great points. Will, what did you think of it? Did it surprise you that there was like a lack of like, physical traditional romance in the film? And if so, like what'd you think?
I sort of read it as a lot of talk and not a lot of it. Not being able to like basically perform as much as you wanted to advertise that you could. Like you thought you were a big hot shot and you talked a good game, but then when it came down to it, the substance, like the style might have been there, but the substance beneath wasn't really there. And so he was egged on to sort of prove that he could do what he said he could do. And when it got more involved in something he was used to in terms of like robbing like a bank, which he was used to just holding up grocery stores, which seemed very easy and he had gotten used to doing that. But when it came to actually robbing a bank and getting away with that, or figuring out all the pieces about what he was getting into, that he was in over his head. And then it's the same thing too, sort of like with the sexuality that he tries to convey. And then it's like, well, when they start going at it, then suddenly he's not interested, or he's not able to, or he is feeling out of his element and isn't sure how well he's going to perform. I guess up until like it's inferred at the very end that they do. But yeah, it was interesting because yeah, that first few minutes with them together is very much every sort of phallic reference, I feel like, between the Coke bottles and
And just the fact
the
that she's
pistol.
naked when she meets him.
Yeah, she's topless and perfectly fine, just hanging out the window, chatting to him, and yeah, sure, you're about to steal my folks' car, but it's cool, you seem like a nice guy. Let's chat for a little bit. You're interesting. I've been bored stiff in my room all the time, and so yeah. Oh, and also like the cigar too. That was interesting. Just his smoking or the matchstick that was in his mouth. There's the one scene where she tries to, use the cigar too, and then seems to not enjoy the taste of it. But she enjoyed holding the gun for when they were posing for photographs. So that was pretty cool too. Interesting sort of comparison. But yeah, I think it was a lot of talk and not a lot to back up what they said they could do. So
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely was quite surprised by the lack of traditional like romance, but I think it made it all the more touching, like in the fucked up way, I guess, like that she's able to still have some of her needs met with like the friendship and obviously like the companionship of robbing the banks and being in the gang together. It does add a little bit of a tragic lens to her character a bit, like when you see her sort of so frustrated and like unfulfilled in some of those scenes. Yeah, it was really unexpected. I thought this was going to be more similar to a movie that I think is a brilliant companion piece to this. A little bit of a hard watch, like particularly the first 20-30 minutes while you're acclimating to it, but Natural Born Killers is very Bonnie and Clyde-esque in terms of how they meet and how that whole thing unfolds. It's more of a critique on like what's the word I'm looking for, like news and like media portrayals and how like media can control the narrative, but they're very sexual. So that's what I was expecting, was to have them, I don't know, like hot and heavy, kissing, making out, like like it's one big long honeymoon. So I was quite surprised that it wasn't that at all. But I thought it was all the better for it. Why do we think, I don't have an answer in mind for this, by the way, this is really just an open-ended question. Why do we think at the end he is able to perform, right? Why are they able to consummate their, is that the director just simply like giving the audience a little bit of what they want, like or is there something else at play there? How did you guys read that?
Obviously, he's just really into her death poetry.
Yeah. So she's giving him something that he wants, and it arouses him. I mean, maybe, like, I think that's I don't know if you're kidding or being serious, but I think that's a valid interpretation.
I was joking. To me, it felt like shoehorn plot point, if anything. It's just like they were trying to add legitimacy to the relationship by having them consummate it, something along those lines. It felt like one of the only things that was probably kind of an old Hollywood forced event.
maybe he finally felt validated. Maybe he just always had a doubt about how good he was able to hold on to everything, and by the end he thought that they were actually going to be okay. So maybe he felt comfortable and validated after all that. That's kind of how I sort of read that. But again, it could just be well, we're about to wrap everything up and they're not going to make it. So we'll give him a little bit, a little bit of time.
Get them laid once, just
yeah, just so he can say he did it once in his life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did also have a near-death experience together right before that, so maybe it kind of solidified any like lingering trust issues, or overcame them, I should say.
I did a little bit of research. Take this with a grain of salt, because this comes from the internet, which we all know is the most reliable place to get your information. But I did read that the real Clyde was sexually assaulted by another male prisoner who he eventually killed in 1931, just before he was released. So I thought it was maybe, because this was like technically still within like the Hays Code, although it wasn't really being enforced. I think it ended a year later. So I don't know if they just thought they couldn't get away with that angle or didn't want to put that angle. I mean, he makes an offhand comment, early in the film of like, "There's nothing wrong with me. I don't like boys," right? Which like, I thought like interesting that they have him say that, but don't go into that part of because I think it would have added a dimension, but maybe they weren't quite ready for that yet in New Hollywood to explore, sexual assault of a male in cinema. It is explored in a couple of years in some another one of my favorite movies, Midnight Cowboy, but yeah, they stopped short a little bit, which was it's disappointing. No, I mean, not really disappointing, but I just like when I read it, I was like, oh man, that would have added a really interesting dimension to his character and that sort of dynamic. And yeah,
it does seem like a little bit of a nod to that.
Sure, maybe that they're like, well, we can have him make this comment, but like stop short of like actually exploring it. Or maybe audiences would have been savvy enough to know like, hey, he's come out of prison, maybe something happened. I'm not really sure. Well, let's have a little chat about heist tropes, since this movie is in a lot of ways a heist film. There's many heists. It's more like a heistathon, I guess, like than a heist in the film. But what are some of your favorite? We'll go one at a time. May, I'll start with you. So some of your favorite heist tropes, and what do you think is overdone? Like what should we stick a fork in?
So my answer is actually the same for both.
Oh, really?
It's super overdone, but I'm also very fond of it. And
Okay.
I love when it's included in a heist film, but it's done in like a slightly different way. Which I would say Bonnie and Clyde did. It's like the whole, okay, we gotta get a crew. Like scene.
Yeah.
When whoever's planning the heist like goes out and finds all their old connections and buddies and specialists to get the whole crew together. Love that. Done to death, but I love it. And I like this because it was more like they wanted to get their names out there. They were telling everyone like, hey, I'm Bonnie Parker, I'm Clyde Barrow, like with the Barrow gang. And it, that's attractive to people like C.W. Moss and his brother, and that's how they get the crew together. And I like that it was more just kind of random in this movie. Like whoever happened to be working on their car, they're like, "Hey, you seem useful." When it's clear that he is not cut out to be a getaway driver. So yeah, no, I appreciated that it wasn't the stereotype. I guess that probably wasn't even a standard trope at this point, but it was a funny way of putting a crew together. And the reluctant Blanche.
Yeah, to say the least, Blanche was reluctant indeed.
I just have to say, it's not an answer to your question, but talking about Blanche, I'm amazed that Blanche didn't get shot earlier in the film. Like when she's running around flailing everywhere, I'm thinking, dude, those cops are aiming at everybody. There is no way you were not getting hit by somebody. And then she made it through like almost the entire film and then still made it out alive at the end. I mean, inferably, right? Unless, but that to me was like, I think that was the most surprising part for me about that. But anyway.
What was she armed with? Was that like a metal spatula?
Spade, I think it's a gardening spade is what it was. But yeah. Just screaming. So. I think she did make it out. I'll fact check myself on the backside of the edit, but apparently the real Blanche Barrow saw the film and took issue with like reducing her to a screaming idiot. Like she didn't even like her character in the movie. Because you gotta think this is only 30 years like after the events of the film, right. So like some of these people were still alive. Yeah.
Oh man, I would have been pissed.
Yeah, she took big issue.
Really? Yeah.
She may have even taken legal action. I gotta look that up. It's also I'll throw something in here supplemental, but I know she definitely took issue with it.
Dang, man. Well, anyway, back to your earlier question about tropes. I feel like, and sort of a little bit off of what you said, May, when they're putting a team together, there's always like that one guy on the team that fucks something up that is like a loose cannon, but they for some reason still have him there. And I'm saying him because it is 9 times, I don't think it's ever been a woman. It has always been a dude who has like a short temper or an itchy trigger finger or is not on the same page as anybody else on the entire crew. And yet somehow he is looped in because he has some sort of skill set that they're like, we need this guy. And you're like, no, you don't really need He does not need to come along. But he's usually, whoever this character is usually, if they are not the impetus for why things, start to fall apart, they will at some point not be helping the situation. And so I feel like that is definitely the case in a lot of heist movies, not all of them, but just several of them. And I'm going to pull back up Ambulance. The Michael Bay movie I talked about is definitely an example of that. There's definitely a guy who is just an absolute a-hole, and you're like, I just can't, I'm waiting for you to get shot by somebody or get left. So that comes to mind. In terms of like something that I like though with the sort of the heisty tropes is there's always something that they don't anticipate, that they have to figure out on the spot how they're going to get around it in order to still pull off the heist. And I like
Yeah.
watching characters that are smart, that are interesting, that are not, complete murderous criminals that have to then figure out how they're going to get out of whatever the situation is that they're in, maybe still pull off the heist, but at least, get past the immediate danger. And so I like that when there's like a little curveball that they have to figure out on the spot and actually do something intelligent to get it done.
So the inside man who's a rat, I feel like is done to death. Like I could go the rest of my life without seeing that. I think it's just like we all expect it when there's like a crew that there's going to be maybe an inside like person who's working against them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's because they're angry at they're not getting their fair share or if there's a personal reason, whatever it is. I feel like I'm always on the lookout for that. Going back to Reservoir Dogs, I think they did something really interesting with how that unfolds in that particular film, with who the person is and what state they're in, after the heist. But yeah, just I think it's done to death, and like let's move on. Let's do something else. What I like about heist films, like one of my favorite sort of like part of like that narrative structure is the planning phase. I think you get a lot of really good character development often during the planning phase, because you see people's strengths, their opportunities for like how adept they are at a criminal, and usually you get a lot of like character conversation and talk there, like but that can be really, really interesting. So I love, like, especially when they got like the little cork board and all the little things pinned up, and get a little bit of banter going back and forth on shit. Good times. So
Awesome.
I could see why that would be a negative to somebody too. It is like very much a Hollywood thing to have a fucking cork board with like, with like pins and like routes and like shit on there. But I don't care. I love it.
Gotta suspect anybody going into Hobby Lobby, man. They're getting all those craft supplies. They're planning something.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That or they're hunting a serial killer.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Also a
right.
detective trope.
We're doing a podcast on
To kind of bring the episode to a close. First of all, is there anything anybody else wants to add about Bonnie and Clyde? I'll let you guys, if there's anything last minute you want to talk about, I suppose, before we transition to a little game. But
I have a silly question. Were they that good looking?
I don't think so. Like I think like Gene Hackman's character, like the brother, was supposedly like better looking than Clyde, and like the photos that I saw, like I was like, oh, okay, like not bad, but yeah.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia article now. They're fine.
Fine.
They're fine.
Yeah, fine. That's right. Yeah, they're not hideous or anything, like, but like,
That's it.
yeah. So yeah, I guess, like, would you swipe right or left? Like that's the question.
Well, the photos are black and white, so
And probably
there's
from not the
Nice.
best distance.
if a black and white photo showed up on my Tinder, I'd be very confused.
I would be more inclined to accept on the right.
Nice. That might be the
It's
best
like-
way to stand out on Tinder. You'd be like, wait a minute, actually,
100%.
I'm digging
Oh,
this image
gosh.
of the real life image of Bonnie with the gun on the front end of the car.
Mhm.
I'll have to
That's
pop
pretty
some of
cool.
these into the edit. Did you see?
Mhm.
You can actually, if I think it's on the Nevada California border, like the actual car is like there with like there's like 100 and something bullet holes in it. It's on display. It's pretty amazing. Some of the photos, it's like it's wild.
Man. I do have one question for you guys. If you had to choose, you don't have to necessarily choose one, but your favorite heist movie from all of the ones that you have seen.
Yeah, Heat, easy for me. I
Mm,
have some recency
yeah.
bias having just rewatched it, but that it's so far and above like anything that I've ever seen. It's easy.
Awesome.
Again, sometimes I like movies just for vibes. I do like Baby Driver, even though like I don't think the heists are
Mm,
that impressive, but like as a heist film, I like it. Also, you get to see Kevin Spacey like shot in the chest. It's great.
May's like, check. Yep.
How about you?
Well, I would have to say I really enjoy Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, the Guy Ritchie
Fun one.
heist movie. Yeah. That for me
Nice.
was entertaining because it's got a bunch of guys who are they're dark characters, but I just really want to see how it's going to turn out. It's all twisty and there's different people involved and you're not really sure who's maybe going to off who and how it's going to turn out. And yeah, there's something about that sort of gangster heisty film that really appeals to me that I felt like was good in that, was kind of the same way in Snatch. And then when Guy Ritchie came out with The Gentleman more recently, I felt that same kind of vibe again. So yeah.
So let me ask you to go further down the rabbit hole, put you on the spot. Which is better, Snatch or Lock, Stock? There's one definitive answer here, so I expect you to answer correctly.
Well, I'll probably get it wrong, but I'd have to say it's Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
That you are correct. Yeah, that is the correct answer.
Yeah.
Snatch is very good, but people are
it's
like,
no Lock, Stock. Yeah.
have the hot take of like, oh yeah, Snatch is like I'm like, no,
No,
absolutely
there's
not.
no way.
Yeah.
Snatch, or I was going to
Good
say, yeah,
job.
Lock, Stock is the OG. Yeah.
You passed the test.
Yeah.
I was gonna put a posting on the internet for a podcast host position if you said Snatch.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Gotta tread lightly around Chris.
He's joking, but he's not joking.
Unless, yeah. Amazing. Well, to close out this week's episode, we are going to do another lightning list. So I guess it's not really technically a game so much as it's a fun activity where we are going to build the top 6 definitive, like this is the list, right? Like everything else should just be eradicated from the internet after this, but this is the top 6 definitive heist films brought to you by Screen Quest. So 2 nominees apiece, and then we'll have to order them out. So and it's okay if you haven't seen a film, like no worries, like we'll you can just use what you know from pop culture, and that's how you make a good list, right? You don't watch the movie on it and you put it somewhere really low. May, what do you have?
I have a controversial pick because I guess this is kind of a reverse heist, but I
Fine.
was going to say Inception.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
I'm ranking that one. No, I think that's a good pick. I think that is
Nice.
it's an interesting pick, and that I would say counts for sure.
Okay, good. And then I already said it, but Baby Driver.
Well, you can do 1 or 2 picks if you want to do both of yours. Like if you know what both of them are, you can absolutely go for it.
Part of me wants to just throw something out there to be ridiculous, but at the same time, part of me is like, I've already mentioned 2 that I really enjoy. I'd have to go with Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. For the other one though, I mean, Ocean's 11 is sort of classic. I mean, whether we're talking, I haven't actually seen the original one with the Rat Pack the whole way through, so I can't speak to that. But I really enjoyed the remake of it, and I feel like that sort of, I mean, besides the fact that it's been carried on in about 4 different sequels, has also been probably what kickstarted a few other heist movies to come out after it. So I might be a little vanilla in that I've already mentioned them too, but I'm gonna have to go with those 2, Ocean's 11 and Lock, Stock.
Solid choices.
Yeah, I think very good choices. All right, well, I'm gonna give my two picks here for the heist film. So Heat, I've already said, definitely
Classic.
just amazing. And my second pick is actually a Stanley Kubrick film called The Killing from 1956. Yes, 1956. It stars Sterling Hayden, and it had a tremendous influence on Reservoir Dogs because it is told out of sequence. It has a group of misfits who put together a robbery of a horse track, and it is incredibly ahead of its time. It's amazing. Really, really exciting, tight, and has just, I think, one of the more interesting structures of like traditional. This would have been traditional Hollywood era, so I think it gets big points for that. So that's my pick.
Nice.
Good choices.
Now we have the fun task of ranking all these, picking
Well,
them.
I know you're
so
gonna put Inception at the bottom.
let me go back through and think.
Wow.
Like, and like I'm also taking into like cultural relevance too. So as much as I might want to put Inception at the bottom, let's see, we have Lock, Stock, Inception, Heat, The Killing,
Baby Driver.
Ocean's 11, and Baby Driver. I'm actually gonna put Baby Driver below Inception. As much as I love that movie more than Inception, I think Inception has more cultural relevance. So
Yeah. Although I will say Baby Driver, extremely accurate depiction of what driving in Atlanta is like.
Ah, noise.
complete with the music and everything. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if only it was like a music video, that would make it even better.
All right, so I'll give you my rankings, and then we could try to like suss this out. So I think I'm gonna do Baby Driver, or sorry, yeah, Baby Driver, The Killing, Ocean's 11.
That is okay. That makes sense.
Lock, Stock, Inception, and Heat. And it's just, again,
Ooh.
I personally don't like, you guys know I hate Inception.
Yes.
But the cultural relevance of that movie is pretty astounding, and like originality as far as like what the concept of that movie, I feel like I would put it second place, actually. So that's my ranking.
Nice.
I unfortunately have not seen most of the films you two recommended. My only criticism is I think Ocean's 11 should be higher on that list.
Fair.
Maybe knock it up 1 point past Lock, Stock. Although I'd have to say Lock, Stock is better than Ocean's 11. So
I agree.
That's
So
tough.
what would it, so would we put Ocean's 11 higher than?
Especially for considering like cultural impact.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah. Sorry, Lock, Stock. Sorry, Britain. We'll get
You
our
guys
act
can
together
tweak
one
it
day.
too, like, because we come to consensus. So like my list is like that. I just wanted to give you mine. Like you can each do your own, and then like we can kind of like get a consensus there and like figure it out.
I think it's pretty
Well,
close. Like
yeah.
I'm pretty on par with what you've got. So it's really nitpicking at that point.
I agree with yours, Chris, but I would put Ocean's 11 in the number 3 spot and bump
Okay.
down
Is it really
Nice.
going to be that easy?
It's going to be that easy.
Wow. All right. I guess this
We're
is a
not
match
fighting.
made in heaven. Yeah, for podcast co-host. Amazing. All right. Well, I'll list those out in a cool way on the video version to give you guys incentives to come check that out. But there you go. Have it. That's the definitive list of heist movies, like the top 6 of all time, according to ScreenQuest, which is the only source you need for all of your movie ranking needs.
And that is in perpetuity. There can be no more heist films of quality.
It's true.
It's just impossible.
Yep. Indeed.
Does that mean that he actually gets like a Sethi award? Is that are we still doing that?
I mean, we could give it like a lifetime achievement. Lifetime
Yeah.
Sethi award
Lifetime
for like
Sethi.
for the greatest heist film. Yeah, why not? Why not?
We should
I like
let De Niro and Pacino know.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Michael Mann, he's doing the book tour right now for Heat 2, like which is a prequel sequel novel that he hopes to turn into a film. So he's really active on Twitter. I'll here you go. Here's your here's your NFT of this.
Do it.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of the show and the drawing of another main quest. I haven't like finished editing the episode, so I'm not sure if it'll end up, in case it hasn't ended up there. We have stipulated that May is going to get a pick this time because we have seesawed between Will and I for several episodes. So regardless of what I draw, it is going to be a May pick that we land on. I will try to make it apparent that I'm shuffling, no matter how many times it takes. So here we go. We'll make it happen. I'm gonna will this to just be it first time, so I don't have to like cut around this or do anything fancy. So
Nice.
all right.
May the odds be in our favor.
Yeah. All right. The first attempt is a deja vu. So let me look and see if this is a May pick. I think it is based on the number. And I was right. Nailed it. Didn't even have to do it again. So
Noise.
this is a deja vu. Here's our description of that category because it's been a while. Imitation is the best kind of flattery. Choose a film that pays homage to another film or genre, and we decide whether that homage is successful. The selection is Dirty Pretty Things, which is a film I've not seen. So this is going to be yet another opportunity to check another off the list and experience something new, which is really what I love about this podcast. So give us a little teaser for what Dirty Pretty Things is.
Yeah, so the genre that it like kind of fits into and that I want us like thinking about the film through is like mystery / thriller. It does focus on two immigrants living in, I believe, London. And it does it does give a lot of insight into like the unique difficulties they're facing in the city as immigrants, but there's also this like mystery surrounding this hotel that both of them are connected to, and the scary things that might be going on there.
Nice.
Sounds very intriguing. I cannot wait to check it out. A little like revisiting of our last deja vu, which is Knives Out. We're like a month out from that movie or so, right? Like, or a couple of months out, and there's like no marketing. Like, I've seen one still.
Yeah,
What is up with that?
So they did reveal like who's in it, but
yeah, but like, where's the trailer? Like, come on, man! You spent a lot of money to get this IP that is like huge. I really selfishly, I just want to know a bit more about it because I'm excited. So. But also Netflix is kind of bad about marketing their shit. Sometimes like something will be like a week out and I'm like, I didn't even know this existed before now. Glad I only have to wait a week, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not seeing like an official release date. I know it's supposed to be at some point this year, but there's only 4 months left to the year. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Fair enough. Amazing. All right. Well, more to come on that because I'm sure we'll talk about that when it comes out. But Glass Onion, I believe it's called, right? Yeah, I think that's Knives Out, Glass Onion. There's Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery or something like that. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for all the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the views. We really do appreciate it. Engage with us on social media at ScreenQuest Pod. Recommend the show to a friend. Please, please, please. We would love you forever if you do that. And until next week, we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.